Hi guys, welcome to my very first video. For the last couple of months I've been working on a project which is some 1770s working woman's dress, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So the very first item, the innermost layer, is the shift, which I actually made out of a white bed sheet, white cotton bed sheet. Shifts usually would have been made out of linen at the time. Linen is very moisture wicking and would protect your outerwear from basically all of the dirt and gross stuff from your body. So you would sweat all over your shift and then you would wash the hell out of that instead of washing your outerwear. So for the shift, I used the Simplicity pattern 8579. It's pretty good. I had a bit of trouble with it to begin with because the sizing on it is whack. I retook my measurements, and on the chart from the pattern it says that I am a US size 18, and I'm not. I'm an Australian size 12-ish, and Australian sizes are numerically higher than American sizes. So, and then I pulled out the pattern pieces and I realized that this pattern is for a US size 4 to 12. So I hadn't even started cutting and already I'm like... so I just cut the size 12, which is the largest size from the pattern. So the front and back pieces are pretty much identical, except for the neckline, and they're just two big rectangles. One really nifty thing actually is that the triangle that you cut out at the top to sort of make the shoulders a bit narrower actually gets swapped around and becomes the gauze at the side of the skirt, which make the skirt fuller. Originally the neckline was just way too high, much higher than my stays, so I did make it a bit bigger, and then I folded over the seam allowance and felled it down, and then I used a bobbin to thread a little ribbon through that seam so that actually draws it tighter around the neckline. The sleeves are just two squares basically sewn up into a rectangle with this little diamond shaped gusset in the underarm so that you can have a bit of freedom of movement in your arms. So I did all the construction seams on my machine, and then I felled down the edges of all of the seams by hand just to close in all the raw edges. Basically people in the past just did not care what the inside of a garment looked like. At all, but it's important for all of the edges to be encased in this kind of thing because you are going to be washing it so much, it's going to be against your body, and if you don't fold and enclose all of these edges, the thing is just going to fray and fall apart in a hot second. So even though they didn't really care about finishing the inside ever, it was really important to finish all of the inside seams on a shift. So the pattern I used for the stays is Butterick, did I say it was Simplicity before? It's Butterick B4254. I used this one with the center front opening. And would I recommend this pattern? Anyway, this is the one that I used, and it was huge around the shoulders, so I did have to make a few adjustments there. I think it's based on those, those red stays.
I've seen in a lot of different places, like used as a reference a lot, because it's got the horizontal bones across the front, like across the bust, which those have, so I think it's kind of based on those, and it just wasn't right. It was very short-waisted, which is actually turns out okay for me because I'm very short-waisted as well. But if you are not very short-waisted, you will have to lengthen them a lot, I'm sure.
So the construction of them is actually not nearly as complicated as it looks. It's just two pieces. The inner piece I made out of more bed sheets, and the outer piece I made out of some scrap upholstery fabric. And the pattern did call for interfacing in between, which I just left out and regretted later. So I just slapped the two pieces together, sewed the boning channels, inserted my cable tie boning, and then bound the whole thing in bias binding, which I did by hand. I did in quite sort of big stitches because I liked the little handmade look of it. And you can see here I actually used metal eyelets at first. I did end up taking them out later, but I am glad I used them to begin with because it made fitting it a lot easier if I could lace it up. So here's what it looked like when it was mostly finished before I decided it wasn't giving me the right shape, and I basically ripped it apart again. You can see I added all of these extra eyelet holes around the top because I was trying to get that flat line across the bust, and it was just too big and it was not working.
The bonings didn't crisscross over, like you can see they just ended, so there was a gap there underneath the boning, and it just meant that like it was a weak point, a point where it could flex, and it was right under the bust, so like the point where your body's curving, the stays were also curving, and so it just ended up looking like you were wearing a vest. Like it might as well have not had any boning at all. So what I did is I took off the binding because I did the binding before. I was happy with the fit. I don't know why I did that. So I took off all the binding and ripped out all of the boning channels, and I just did them like straight up and down in the front, and then here just straight as well. I got rid of the horizontal boning across the bust, and I originally used cable ties, but I couldn't find the heavy duty ones, so it was just too soft. It wasn't really doing anything. So I actually ended up using like bamboo skewers, which I cut the pointy end off and sanded it, and they worked a treat. So I just used those in the front, and it gives it this funny like ripply effect, like a placemat. And yeah, just because it was really, the fabrics I used were a bit too thin and soft, so I whipped stitch down some more like stiffer canvas in the front there as well.
Then I reattached the binding and I pulled out the eyelets that I had used and redid the buttonholes by hand. So I'm very excited because I just finished the very last eyelet hole on these stays, which means that all I have to do is get these babies laced up and they are finished. So overall, I'm pretty happy with it, how it turned out. I took out some fabric from the side seams and from the center back because it was a bit big, but I took it out particularly from the side seams because I wanted it to like really give you that cone shape. I didn't want it to
have extra room in the bust because I wanted it to be flat, baby, flat. And yeah, I think it achieves that pretty well. So I will show you guys what it looks like on.
So I used a lace that I bought at the fabric store. I did try to make my own cord for the lacing. I tried a few different methods, but all of them just took so long. So I did end up buying some. I bought that sort of shoelace type lacing, the smallest one I could find, and I am using a bodkin to lace the cord through the stays. Bodkin's basically just a giant needle, but it's got a little flat like bulb on the end, so you won't stab yourself or damage your garment while you're using it.
So after you've got the shift on and you've got the stays on, there's still more layers of underwear to go. That is the bum roll, which will give you, sorry, there is my dog. It's just kicking open the door, coming to say hello. Oh, what was I talking about? Yes, I know, puppy, I know. So after the stays and the shift, you have the bum roll, which even working class women would have worn a bum roll just to get the fashionable silhouette. Like, you know, obviously they're not going to be getting around trying to milk the cows in huge panniers or anything like that. But they would still want to follow the fashionable shape as much as they could. So, you know, I've got like a small bum roll goes on next, and then after that the petticoat. I'm only wearing one with this outfit because I can only be bothered to sew one, but that goes on top of the bum roll, and that's it. That's all of the undergarments. Layer number one. Okay, so today I'm making the bum roll. I have just cut out by folding in half a little sort of crescent shape. It should really be like a proper crescent, but I didn't have any fabric big enough. And I'm just gonna sew that together and fill it with some stuffing, which I saved from the cushions of a couch that I took apart before I put it in the hard rubbish. And then I'm going to attach on the edges some just thin twill tape to tie it on. So let's see how we go.
So the bum roll just ties on slightly below the waist with the twill tape, and then the petticoat is just made of two big rectangles gathered at the top with a running stitch and then stitched onto some more twill tape. And the twill tape at the front is actually longer so that I can loop it around my back and tie it at the front again. The top part of the seam on the petticoat is left undone to create a little gap that you can stick your hand through to access your pocket if you have one. I haven't made one yet, but I will. The bum roll did end up giving me a little bit of a weird shape. It kind of juts straight out, but that will be disguised by the outer skirt and by the jacket once they go on top.
So that is the undergarments in this video. Stay tuned for the next installment where I'll do the outerwear. But for now, I think I had better say goodbye because it's getting dark. I will see you guys next time.